Live.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Urban Renal Talk with Tamika.
And Steve, welcome everyone. Welcome. We got a great show tonight for you.
Yes,
What's going on, Tamika?
nothing, just enjoying the weather up here in Philly, all the rain.
Okay, okay. I
How?
know we've been having a lot of rain down here as well. So uh, we have tonight with us Don P. Morman, live from Queens. I'm sorry, Jamaica, Queens, New York. How's it going, Don?
Oh, it's all right. It's a little cloudy over here, but it's okay.
Great, great. Hey, Don, before we get started with our show, I just wanted to send some shout outs. One, Tamika, shout out to one of our guests we had a long time ago, Wendy Allen Bell from the Wendy Allen Bell Foundation, dialysis and post transplant patient advocates out in Los Angeles, California. She was kind of missing in action for a long time, and she finally got reconnected on Facebook. And I thought, she something that happened to her. I was really concerned about her. So it's good to say that she's live and well, and she's still doing the work out in California. So hey, Wendy, and then also Tamika. You remember Tamika Smallwood?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to send out a shout to Tamika Smallwood because she was honorably mentioned in the 16th annual essay contest hosted by the Renal Support Network.
Awesome.
And, Tamika's from Norfolk, Virginia, 10 years kidney warrior
Go ahead.
and author. But check this out. The one thing about a story that was touching is when she was diagnosed at 23 years old, she was depressed. Like, I mean, that could be expected with young people. Anybody getting diagnosed with a chronic disease like that. But her son at the time, he was real small, and he used to see her cry and go through it and have her moments. So one day he said to her, Hukana Matata, and I guess that's from the Lion King, which means no worries for the rest of your days. And
Oh, Akutu Patty, yes.
yes, and for her son to be so young and to tell his mom that seeing her go through that, that gave her the will to push forward and move on. And then just one motto that she goes by, she lives by the motto that you only have three choices in life: to give up, give in, or to give it all you got. So I just wanted to send a shout out to her because I thought that was real special that she got
Yes.
honored, as a honorable mention.
That's wonderful.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, absolutely. So on to our show, the great Don P. Edwards. You're very known throughout the kidney dialysis community, Don, being from New York City.
Oh
Or,
my.
well, I'm sorry, Jamaica, Queens.
Yes, you could say New York City because the five boroughs is that encompasses the whole thing. But I've been doing a lot of work for a long time, and thank God he's been keeping me so that I can, continue the advocacy work, and education is just my passion. And I'm just happy to be able to continue to do the work. And I just want to thank you all for giving me a forum this evening to try to pass on some more information, and hopefully we can help some patients one at a time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So tell us how your story started.
My story started pretty simply. I was 23 years old, just like the young lady that you were talking about, Tamika, and I was having some back pains, and I was nauseous, and I thought that I was pregnant again. I was excited, I had a small child already, so I thought she was going to have a little brother. And I went to the doctor to check, and the doctor said, "Oh no," she says, "you're not pregnant. your BUN is sky high, and I want to send you to a kidney specialist. Went to the kidney specialist and found out that I was in stage 5 renal failure, which back in 1993, they weren't calling it by stages. He just said you're in kidney failure and that you're going to have to start dialysis.
Mm.
And I had no idea what all of that was. I knew where the kidneys were, but I didn't know much about dialysis. And there wasn't I didn't have a computer, and the information was just not readily available back then. So I was really discouraged about my fate. I thought that, I was gonna die soon. And he sent me to he gave me two choices. He says you have two ways that you can do dialysis. You can do in-center dialysis where you go 3 times a week, or you can do peritoneal dialysis. That's with a tube through your belly, and you do that 7 days a week. And he said to me, but you don't want to do peritoneal dialysis because you'll get an infection and die. And those words still resonate in my spirit right now, because by him saying that, he kind of forced me to in-center dialysis. And he took away my choices. And so I spent 3 years in center dialysis, and I hated it. I hated every day that I went, and I was still trying to work. I worked for the post office at the time, and I was on the 11 p.m. shift. So I would do my dialysis after work in the morning, and then try to get some sleep and go to work at night. But it just wasn't working for me. And eventually I ended up going on disability, like so many of us. And after the 3 years of in-center dialysis, I really didn't want to do it anymore. I started skipping treatments. I was the worst patient that you would ever want to see. I used to come to dialysis with a huge blimpie sandwich and a Pepsi, and I would sit there and eat while I was having treatment. Then when I went home, sometimes I would come back, sometimes I wouldn't. And I wanted to stop dialysis. My daughter was, at that time, my daughter was 2 or 3 years old. And I didn't want her to see me um, the way that I was. I didn't want her to grow up with memories like that of her mom. So I considered withdrawing from dialysis. And I stayed out of dialysis for over a week. And there was a young nephrologist in the dialysis center that suggested that I try peritoneal dialysis. And I told him that I didn't want to do that. I was afraid, because I was afraid of the infection and what have you. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. You try peritoneal dialysis. If you like it, good. If you don't like it, well, then you can go ahead on with your plans. I won't get in your way. And I tried peritoneal dialysis and I loved it. I did that for 10 years. I traveled. I was able to spend a lot of time with my daughter, and it was a fantastic experience for me. And then after the 10 years, I finally got called for my kidney transplant. And I
Mm.
had my transplant for 6 years, which we can get in more detail a little bit later. And after the 6 years, the transplant rejected, and I was very, very sick after the transplant rejected, and that's when I looked into home hemodialysis, because I was no longer able to go back to peritoneal dialysis. And I started doing home hemodialysis, and I started getting better, and I started feeling better and better as the years went by. I got out of the wheelchair, and even
Mm.
now, 8 years later, um, I'm working part time and I'm thriving, and I'm doing the things that I love, working in the kidney community, and just doing my best to pass out that education and information to patients. I would never want a patient to feel the way that I felt back then.
Wow.
Wow.
Absolutely. Now, I had got some questions by you. You've been on dialysis 25 years?
It's I believe this is my 27th year.
Wow, 27th year.
Yes.
Okay. So, one thing I wanted to know, or what we wanted to know, what advancements in dialysis has been the most intriguing to you during your 27 years on dialysis?
I would have to say the most exciting thing was 10 years ago when they came up with Next Stage, which is a portable home hemodialysis machine and dialysis system. I followed it because I was working with my local end stage renal disease network. And I went to one of those dinners where they teach you about um, home dialysis and
Hmm.
they give you all of this data. And I've learned to be a really savvy patient. So I was interested in the data. And they were talking about how patients were feeling better, they were living longer, they took less medications, and it was just a whole laundry list of things that we complain about as dialysis patients, like being fluid restricted and not being able to eat the things that we like. And when I found out about that, I still had my kidney transplant, and I always said if anything happened to this transplant, that's what I was going to do. And it became a self fulfilling prophecy. But I think that right now, um, that is one of the most exciting things that has happened in dialysis, in my opinion.
Wow. Wow. So the next stage machine.
Yes.
Wow. Um, so what has been your darkest moment during your 25 years on dialysis?
I believe my darkest moment was when my transplant rejected. And
Mm.
the reason being is when you're going to dialysis, people always tell you, well, just hang in there until you get your transplant. Once you get your transplant, things are going to go back to normal. Your life is going to be much better. You're going to feel better, and everything is going to be, everything's going to be fried chicken and collard greens, and
Right.
and it really wasn't a good experience for me. It was nice to go to the bathroom and pee, and not have to do dialysis treatments. But other than that, there was a lot of side effects and a lot of drawbacks that came along with that kidney transplant. And when it rejected, I was just so depressed because I was expecting it to last longer, and I was just expecting more than I got. So, being sick as I was, and um, uh, uh, um, I had renal bone disease and a whole list of other complications that resulted from the transplant medications. And I believe that was my absolute darkest moment.
So were you sick
Wow.
more than you was healthy with the transplant?
I wouldn't say that. I would say the first 3 years were really bad. I rejected maybe every 6 months or so, and they
Wow.
were small rejections. So I had to go in for plasmapheresis treatments. And after the plasmapheresis treatments and all of these infusions with different medications, it would stop the rejection, and I could, go about go about my life as, quote unquote, as usual.
Right.
And after the 3 years, you know that Medicare no longer sees you as disabled unless you have something else that makes you duly eligible. So they told me it's about time for me to get off of Medicare, so I had to go to work. And those next 3 years were okay. I only rejected 3 times during that 3-year period,
So,
and the medications were just tearing my body up, though.
wow. So the rejections weren't
Mhm.
full rejections; they were quote unquote mini rejections where your numbers were creeping up, and pretty much what they did was kind of um, hampered from getting, from the numbers going up. Was that a temporary solution?
Yes, it wasn't a chronic rejection like you said. I believe they call them humoral rejections. And when you
Mm.
have those, like you said, the numbers start creeping up, the creatinine's going up. You go in for a biopsy and they check the kidney and do all of that stuff to it. And then they start pumping you with medications. And this is like on a daily basis. You can almost equate it to um, the treatments for cancer. Like you have to,
Mm.
you have to go in, you get the infusion treatments, and you're feeling bad the whole time, and eventually, the creatinine starts to go back down, and you start to feel better.
Okay, Don, we had a
Mm.
question. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Anthony T. Baltimore wants to know what is renal bone disease. Can you explain that to him?
Yes, I can. What happens with kidney patients is some people just develop renal bone disease from having high PTH and having not enough calcium. That's why it's important for you to take your renal vitamins and your calcium, or you can develop renal bone disease. And I developed renal bone disease early because of the kidney transplant. I was taking prednisone for the whole 6 years that I had the kidney transplant. And one of the side effects of prolonged use of prednisone is bone disease. And that's when your bones get brittle and they're subject to fracture. And actually, what happened as a result of that was I stepped down off of the curb one day, and I felt a pop, and my hip
Mm.
was fractured, and I had to have a hip replacement as a result. And I've had since then. I still have renal bone disease. My shoulder now is deteriorating, and it's like more like arthritis symptoms.
Wow. Very well explained,
Mm.
Don. You
Thank
put
you.
that very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. So,
Wow. So
Tamika, did you want to ask? You have something? Did you want to ask?
yes, I wanted to ask, how did you deal with your depression?
Oh, the depression. The depression is almost the worst part of the whole kidney disease in itself, because um when you feel depressed, you don't feel like going to treatment. You don't feel like well, since I'm at home, I had a couple of times, a couple of episodes where I had gotten really depressed, and I stopped doing treatment for days, and my potassium went up, and I found myself in the emergency room. um, I didn't want to eat, I wasn't sleeping, and all of these things, they need treatment. And in the African American
Mm.
community, that that's something that we don't do. We don't go sit on the couch and talk about our feelings to somebody else. You just build a bridge and get over it, or you just keep it
I think
moving,
that's why
or try
I
to,
think we're taught that.
you know,
I
you
think like we're taught that to just move forward. Like,
yes,
you
exactly.
don't have to talk to anyone. You just get up and go to work and move forward when there's
It's
going to constantly be that issue there that
right.
needs to be taken care
It
of.
just doesn't go away. It comes back, and sometimes it comes back worse than the last time that you have it. And I would have these episodes that would last me like a month long, where I was
Right.
just discouraged and disgusted, and I didn't want to do anything.
Right. Right. Were you aware of the side effects prior to getting a kidney
Oh
transplant?
my gosh. Tamika and Steve, I have to tell you, I was not aware at all. I had no
Yeah.
idea that these medications had these side effects. Um, and this is back in 1993. So, I mean, back in 2003. So, I don't want to say that they're not letting patients know now. It all depends on your transplant program. But I had no idea that I could face any of these side effects. I knew about the moon face from prednisone, and that was about it. And
Right.
all of those medications have some side effects that can be really harmful.
Mm-hmm. Could you name a
Okay.
couple?
Yes, one of the main medications that you take, anti-rejection medication, is called Prograf. And please look it up. Do your homework, patients. Prograf, Prograf. And that medication causes malignancies. In other words, it causes cancers. In a lot of patients, some people don't have any problem with it at all, but some people can get skin cancers, and in my case, I had colon cancer.
Mm.
Wow.
The next anti-rejection medication is called Cellcept, Cellcept, and that medication causes irritable bowel syndrome, and
Mm.
that's what caused me to have chronic cases of colitis, which is inflammation of the colon, and
Mhm.
you're almost not able to control your bowels. And you have bloody stool, terrible
Mm.
stomach cramps, and you have to seek treatment at the hospital. So all of that, those constant um, cases of colitis irritated my colon, and it led to the pre-colon cancer that I suffered from. And I had to have my colon removed completely. And now I have something called an ostomy, where my a colon was removed, my small intestine sticks out of my belly,
Oh
and I
gosh.
have to wear a pouch to hold my bowels.
Right. So just wanted to clarify something. We have Anthony. Thanks for chiming in, Anthony. He says, keep in mind, we all do not get the same side effects. Everyone is
Correct.
different, which you did mention that everyone doesn't get these side effects. Some people do and some
Absolutely.
people don't. You're just speaking on your experience
Correct.
with these medications and that this can and is one of the side effects of the medications that they use for transplant rejection.
That's correct. And
Right.
I
Okay.
want to make it very clear to everyone that's listening. I would never tell anyone not to take a chance and go for your transplant. I know scores of people who
Mm.
are doing very well. As a matter of fact, there are people who've had their transplant 40 and 50 years. So this is just my scenario. But you just have
Right.
to educate yourself and know the possibilities so that you can make the best decision for yourself. And I
Right.
wish
Right.
Right.
everyone luck that has a transplant, but you need to know that these
Be aware.
possibilities do exist.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's best to be informed from all angles so you know the good and the bad of
Yes,
what you're about to get involved in, especially
yes,
something serious as a transplant from another person.
that's correct. That's correct.
So, was your transplant from a cadaver or a live donor?
It was yes, it was from a cadaver.
Was it high risk?
No,
Did
not
they
at
say?
all. She worked in the hospital.
Hmm.
She was a young fellow that caught an aneurysm and just died instantly. So the organs were fresh. It was a 5 out of 6 antigen match. So that's an excellent match. However, she carried
Wow.
a virus called CMV, and that virus was passed on to me, and that also helped to kind of exasperate some of the other conditions that I had.
Wow.
Okay. We had a question from Anthony again. He wanted to know, how about swelling? Have you ever had that happen? And if so, how did you make it better? As far as feet swelling, I mean, let me just say this before you answer that. Just
Right.
speaking from a healthcare perspective, um, it depends with their swelling. Some people going to have it, and some aren't. And some people, the swelling contributes to congestive heart failure. If your heart is not pumping right, the fluid is going to settle down in your ankles. Some people, it comes from fluid overload. You know, you're not able to urinate, and the fluid builds up. So I just wanted to say that. But Don, could you speak to that? Have you ever experienced fluid in your ankles when you had the transplant or when you hadn't had the transplant? And if you did, what helped you reduce the swelling if you're in your ankles if it wasn't contribute to something secondary like heart failure?
The only time that I had trouble with swelling is in the beginning, before I started dialysis. I used to have this, the feet and all the way up to my knees would be swollen, and I was
Mm.
always told to elevate the feet so that the fluid could run back up into the body so that you could eliminate it. So when I had the transplant, I didn't have a problem with swelling at all. But during my dialysis days, the only time I would have swelling was, like you said, Steve, when I was fluid overloaded. And that's something, that we have to be really careful of, because you can only take off but so much during a dialysis session.
Right, right. Okay, okay. I wanted to ask you, since your 25 years on dialysis, 27, what has been your greatest accomplishment dealing with this disease?
My greatest accomplishments have been going through training for home therapy. And when I go through the training and spend all of that time learning how to do my own treatment, that's what's empowered me the
Mm.
most. The fact that I can treat myself and I'm responsible for how I feel because
Yes.
I'm doing it myself. And that, to me, that's been the most empowering accomplishment that could have ever happened. Peritoneal dialysis was fairly easy. Home hemo was a little bit more intensive. And when I finally went home and started doing that treatment myself, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't the bee's knees. I was just so happy, that I was able to do it myself, and I was getting good results, and I started to feel better. And when I got out of that wheelchair and started walking again, I was in great shape. So I was really happy
Wow.
about that.
That's
Wow,
good.
that's amazing.
Mm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Um,
So, what do you tell other patients, like when you meet them?
Well, fortunately, like I said, I work part time, and my
Mhm.
part time job is a patient advocate for Next Stage. So,
Oh,
yes, so that's great. My job is to go around and talk to patients about the benefits of home hemodialysis. And it's like reprogramming patients, because we're so used to 3 times a week dialysis, and we don't even want to do that. So when you tell someone that you
Right.
have to do your treatments more often. The average patient on Next Stage does their treatments in shorter periods of time, but more days a week. So they do their treatments 5 days a week for maybe three hours.
Don,
Right.
quick
Yes,
question.
sure.
Okay, that's interesting. You work for Next Stage, so I'm sure you heard of a company called Outset Medical
Yes,
that has the new dialysis machine
I
called the
actually saw
Tableau.
it. Yeah, I actually saw it. Um, it's not ready for home use yet. From the last thing I heard about it, it's not ready for home use yet. It's not portable either. It is set up for home use, and the interface is really, it looks easy for a patient to use, and what have you.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure about the data associated with it. I haven't seen that yet.
Okay, so we
But
had a question.
yes,
This is from one of our colleagues, um, and hopefully he'll be on the show next week,
all
this
right,
weekend. Jermaine Fingers out of Evansville, Indiana. Okay,
all
that's what it
right.
was. I'm sorry, Jermaine. I had to rethink that. But this is Jermaine's question. He says, "So I am close to my transplant. It's scary. It's scary a bit now. So my question is, on the anti-rejection meds, you have to really research, but it's better not to get transplanted because of all the problems, or to go ahead and get it." This is from Jermaine.
Okay, well, to answer that question, I'm not an authority on what any individual should do. Um, my job, my mission is to present the information so that you can make the decision that's right for you. And I would never tell anyone not to take a chance and go for that transplant, because it makes a whole 180-degree difference on your life. It could be the best thing that
Right.
ever happened to you.
Yeah,
I would never tell anyone not to go for it, but
Jermaine,
just be careful.
absolutely. And let me just chime in, Jermaine. Just from a healthcare perspective, I mean, that's a decision I'm sure that is going to be tough to make. But at the end of the day, I think prayer helps. And
Oh yes.
this is just one side of the coin. There's two sides to everything. We've talked to people on our show, me and Tamika, that's doing absolutely well. One
Yes.
example is Chef Juvan. He hasn't taken transplant medication, I think, in 10 years,
I,
and
mhm.
he's doing absolutely wonderful. Should all patients do what Chef is doing? Absolutely
Absolutely
not.
not.
But
Right.
that's something that works for him. So everything is not for everybody. That's just my opinion. And Jermaine, whatever your gut tells you, your God center tells you to do, I will follow it, research it, and just like Don says, just be careful and know what you're getting
Mhm.
into, and look at your risk
Yep.
involved in everything that you do with that transplant process. What do you think, Tamika?
Yeah. I feel the same. It's all about educating yourself, knowing what you're getting into, knowing the side effects of the meds that you are going to get, and just staying aware. Like if it don't feel good, don't do it. If it feels good, if your spirit is good, if the aura is good, then walk right into it. But don't walk into it blind.
Right.
Have
Yeah,
questions, ask questions, let them know that you're aware of everything that's going on around you. Because when you ask questions, they treat you a little better
Yes, they do.
because they know you're aware.
Yes.
You
I,
know,
yeah.
I
He
had
says
a,
he's
I had an
humble.
incident.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would definitely, I would go for it. I tell patients now that are about to get on the transplant list or are questioning getting on the transplant list, even people that say that they don't want a transplant, I tell them get on the list. You got about 5 to 7 years to wait. When the telephone call comes in that day, your gut or your spirit or the Lord or whatever your higher power is going to tell you whether this is the right decision for you or not.
Right. And so let me just say, Anthony, yes, I did say that. Chef Juvan, he's a chef. He had a transplant. He was on that show. He hasn't taken transplant medication. I believe it's 10 years. Um,
Yes.
I want to say for sure, yes, but I'm 99% it's 10 years he hasn't taken it. And his numbers has been impeccable. But that's his story.
Yes.
I mean, some people's stories are, everybody's story is different. That's all I can say.
Right.
I mean,
body is different.
Exactly. It was a guy that just started dialysis here in Baltimore, maybe almost 6 or 8 months ago. One of the technicians was encouraging. They messed up him being on the list, so he was discouraged. Then she talked to him. He got back at somewhere else, and like 2 months later, he got a transplant, having been on dialysis a year.
Wow.
So it's just, I mean, it's crazy like that.
Yeah. We're just so wonderfully and thoughtfully made, and we're made differently.
Mm-hmm.
I had a reaction to the medications, but again, I talked to dozens and dozens of people who are doing very well with their transplants, and then there's some people that that don't make it. So it's an individual thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Don.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tamika.
With any operation you go through, is the individual, is what your body is going to take you through or not take you through. But you still need to be aware.
That's right.
Absolutely.
It's always risks involved.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, Don, I wanted to ask you, this is a big one for me because you've been around for a while, and I just wanted to know, have you seen any changes with this? What changes, either good or bad, have you seen with organizations such as the National Kidney Foundation or the National Kidney Fund over the last 25 years?
Well, you know what I notice, and it's really encouraging. I see now that more of the kidney organizations are interested in educating patients. They're putting a real emphasis on not only fundraising, because of course they need the funds in order to operate, but I'm seeing the American Kidney Fund, American Association of Kidney Patients. They're doing webinars for patients. They're trying to have pushing out more education.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that in that sense. But also I see where we're losing that sense of touch, that touch education. Whereas we get a whole group of patients together, and like the AAKP convention that they have in Florida. I think that's such a wonderful thing where patients can get together and they can talk to one another and they can learn how to have a better quality of life. And you actually can see and ask questions. The webinars are good, but I read that 40% of dialysis patients do not have internet access. So we're missing a large part of our our patient base here. So there's more needed. There's more needed, but they're making an effort, and I applaud that effort.
Right. Now, I'm just go ahead, Tamika.
Do you feel like they're making an entity to slow down kidney disease, like to raise awareness to diabetes the leading causes of kidney disease, or you feel like they're going out in the community?
No, I don't think it's enough of that. There's just not enough. I think that
So they're
I think all of the organizations have a huge responsibility to spread the word about this. This is like a,
Mhm.
a an epidemic that is plaguing, our society, our country, the world. Um, and I don't think that enough responsibility is being taken from large organizations or from corporate America to spread the word so that people can be informed and be aware before they hit the dialysis point or before they hit
Yeah.
stage 3, 4, 5. Let's slow the, yes,
Mhm.
they are doing some things to try to slow down the process, but it's just not enough. And that's where we come in. That's why
Right.
our work is so important because we're coming in where big business is falling off.
Well, I'm glad Tamika asked you that question because I was going to play devil advocate. Here on this show, we don't try to talk well, I ain't gonna say try. We don't talk negative about organizations.
Right,
However, we had to also point out some things that these organizations do or have done that people may not be aware of. They may be good on one sense, but not, good on another sense.
right,
And for me, my biggest hang up with these big organizations um, is one, they make entirely too much money. The National Kidney Foundation started off back in the 70s, and when they first started off, they weren't making no more than 5 million a year.
okay,
Uh, and then something incredible happened where when they started that Medicare program and the government,
mm-hmm,
started getting strict, uh,
yes,
now all of a sudden they're making over $25 million a year
wow,
in profit. And you can see that it's on the 990 um, income tax for
right,
nonprofits. That's all free information that you can look at right on the internet, the 990.
mm-hmm,
But my point is, these big companies, they do have the information. They do talk about the research, and they do have the webinars. But what about the people, these 40% that don't have access? What about, I believe, should be boots on the ground? Okay, you do have um, kidney awareness walks and um, testing places, but I believe the testing places are not where they need to be in the community, boots on the ground,
yes,
in the food deserts, in the communities that are at risk, in other communities as well, but the communities where you have 17 dialysis facilities within a 15-minute radius or 5-mile radius here in Baltimore, Maryland. That's what I'm talking about. If you have an organization that's putting out all this information and that wants to eradicate kidney disease and
right,
that's doing work, all you have to do if their work is working, just look in the communities and see if there's anything happening in the communities that's eradicating kidney disease. Because I
right.
don't see anything.
There's no
And
improvement. It's getting worse.
no, and I don't want to get on a rant, but I always have to think about that because people, and I want to say this, organizations such as mine, which is a nonprofit, and other small organizations out there that's doing the same thing that I'm doing, me and Tamika, we don't get no sponsorship,
Yeah,
no donations,
right.
but you look on, but we don't complain about it because God got us. And at the
Yes.
same time, you see other people donate to the Kidney Foundation, and you don't even see where your money goes. You're actually doing the work for the Kidney Foundation. You're doing the walk.
Right.
The only thing you get for turning back that money is a T-shirt. But you're actually going out there for them. You're doing the labor. You're picking up the money, and you're turning it over to the Kidney Foundation, and that's the end of that. They don't want to talk to you until next year. We're not like that. This is a everyday thing. Kidney disease happens 24 hours a day,
Yes, it
7 days
does.
a week, 365 days a year, not just every March to host a kidney walk.
Right.
No, no, no. Kidney disease comes every month, every day, every hour.
Yes. I
So
feel
that's my
ex-
rant.
I feel exactly the same way as you, and that's what caused me and a couple of my friends to start the New York State CKD champions, because we were just sick of there not being enough information and resources on the ground, in the hood, or in areas
Absolutely.
where the
No,
people need it.
yeah, no. Kidney disease, let's get this straight so people don't get it twisted. Kidney disease affects everyone,
Yes.
but the most people that are at risk are people of color,
Yes.
okay? People in urban communities that don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, that
Yes. Go
don't have
ahead, Steve.
access to environmental factors like street sidewalks, playgrounds, rec
Right.
parks, stuff like that. It affects everybody, but these people at affect the greatest because
Yes.
they don't they all they subject to every day is food that's high in sodium, saturated fats, carbs, cholesterol. I mean, you could go on and on, Don. So
Yes, I understand. It
you
breaks
know,
my heart, Steve, because there's so many people that could be saved. We don't see one public service announcement about kidney disease. And there's so many other diseases which are not as costly to our economy, number one, because it costs a unbelievable amount of money to keep a person on dialysis. So
right?
so you would think that there would be more public service announcements or more boots on the ground, like you said. But it's not happening. And if we don't get together and do it, it's not going to get done.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to raise awareness, especially with this tour. There's
Oh
no
yes,
other people doing the tour, and it's starting off slow. We have a day coming up in 2 days in Richmond, Virginia, and
yes,
then after that, we don't have nothing set in stone. But I mean, it just keeps pushing. I don't just stop because Richmond and no other person. God's going to
right,
put whatever organization where He wants us to go to deliver this message, and that's
exactly.
how we look at it, and that's how it has to start because
You
um
you can't give up. You
oh
can't.
absolutely not, absolutely not,
You
absolutely not.
just have to keep
Um,
doing it.
I wanted to ask you, um, during this whole 25 years or 27 years, who has been your greatest support during this time?
Oh my goodness. Well, first to commence, I have to say my mother. My mother went to training with me to learn how to operate the home hemodialysis machine. She's my partner. Um, Anything that happens with me and this illness, my mother is stuck to me like glue. And I feel bad in a way because I feel like I'm sucking the life out of her. But it's something that, as a mother, I guess you're just compelled. If your child is sick, you want to be there. Also, my daughter, which is really exciting. My daughter grew up and she decided that she wanted to work in dialysis, and she's now working in a dialysis center herself. She's going to be 28 this year, and she's working in a dialysis center, and she's working on the administrative side. She's not doing patient care, but she's been so affected by seeing mom. And then finally my church family has been monumental in supporting me, keeping me prayed up, keeping me encouraged, um, coming by, checking on me. And and I can't leave out my sister. That's my best friend. These people have just been keeping me prayed up and keeping me strong on those days when I'm doing dialysis and I feel like I don't want to do it anymore. They try to keep me encouraged. And my mother, she's got this chicken soup that's no joke. So when she starts seeing me looking down, she starts making that chicken soup or make me a nice hot pot of grits, and I'm good. I'm good to go. So I have a really great support system. I have to say that.
Wow. Wow. Hey, Don, I wanted to ask you,
Hmm.
tell us about this event, the webinar for patient by patient that's talking about removing the stigma and strengthening our mental health. What's that about?
Okay. That is that was initiated by the Forum of ESRD Networks and ES. Maybe I should tell you what an ESRD network is. The ESRD networks are non for profit organizations that are contracted by Centers for Medicare Services to oversee dialysis and transplant facilities. And inside those networks, they do a lot of different things. But one of the things they do is community outreach and patient education and patient services. So they got a group of patients together and they worked on this project developing a depression toolkit. And it's a booklet of all types of information and resources to screen yourself to see if you may be depressed, and resources that you can use to help you to overcome depression or deal with depression. And with this toolkit, they have now developed the webinar, which is coming up soon. And they're going to discuss the toolkit and they're going to discuss strategies for having a better quality of life, um, and dealing with um, mental hygiene and the stigma, like we said earlier, where people think that you shouldn't go to the psychiatrist. You don't need a psychologist, or if you go into the psychiatrist or psychologist, you're lacking in your faith. I hear that a lot in the churches. Oh, you need to pray more. When you're depressed or when you have mental illness, that's a real thing. And sometimes you can't pray it off. You need resources. And I think that's what this webinar is going to be about. So
Uh-huh.
it's for people to find out, more about the depression aspect. And that's something that you don't talk to your doctor about too much. Now they have the depression screenings, but that's not something that was done in the past. So there's a
Right.
big, there's a big push now to find out what's going on with us, mentally as well as physically.
So we had a question from, oh, well, when is that?
Oh, you
I got
caught
the
that?
date if you don't know.
Yeah. Oh, you
It,
know what? I think it's on my birthday. It's
it's
October
October the
4th.
4th.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's
And
October the 4th, 1 to 2 Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 1 Pacific Central, I'm sorry, 12 to 1 p.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Mountain Time, and 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific Time.
yeah, so
Uh,
they got the whole country involved.
Jermaine wants to know, can one be sent to him via email or delivered to his house?
One of the depression toolkits.
Yes.
Oh, you can go on www dot
Wait a
nc
minute.
uh-huh
Okay, www.ncc
ncc .org, I believe.
.org.
And you can look up Depression Toolkit, and you can download it so that you can read it right on your tablet, or you can have them mail you a copy.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So www.ncc.org.
Right. And if that's not the right email address, if that's not the right address, you can look up ESRD Networks Network Coordinating Center.
All right. Let me write this one down. What is that again?
It's ESRD Network
Uh-huh.
Coordinating Center.
Coordinating Center.
Yes. And you just look up the Depression Toolkit, and you, like I said, you can download it or they can mail it to you.
Uh-huh.
It's really a good tool too. It has some really good resources in it, some things to think about, some ways to try to combat depression, like exercise and listening to music, and doing things that you like, and most importantly, not being embarrassed to go and seek professional help if you need it.
Wow. Absolutely. That's some good information to know.
Yes.
Most definitely. And again, I see this is the thing, Don. This is very good information. But how about the people who don't have access to get this information? How do we change the narrative so everyone can have access to it?
Um, the only thing that the only suggestion or the only answer that I have to that would be our social workers in dialysis facilities. I mean, I know they're overworked and their caseloads are huge, but they have some responsibility to provide us with the information and resources that we need to live a healthy life. And if they if a patient comes to you and say, I'm not feeling good about myself, or if they notice that a patient is acting out in the facility, or if they notice a patient is missing treatment, that's a sign that something is wrong, and it needs to be looked into. Now, people that aren't showing symptoms, unfortunately, Steve, they're just out there. When my transplant rejected, there were no resources available for patients that have rejected kidney transplant.
Yeah, we talked about that too.
Yes, there's nothing available, and I think that definitely someone in the ESRD community, the transplant center, the dialysis center you go back to, someone should bear the burden of responsibility for that, because there's a lot of hurt people walking around out here.
Hey, Don,
Yes.
I just thought of something. Maybe you should start an online group for patients with rejected kidneys.
That might be something,
I mean,
that.
but then see the
How do
thing
you?
is, it could be a closed group, not an open, but a closed one, because maybe not everyone wants people to know that they may have a rejected kidney or going through something.
Right.
But that closed group for that population, I think, is a big factor. And the
Yes.
only one I think the only person who could pull something off like that is someone like you who's been through that process and that could, you know, share that experience, the good and the bad of it, because the way you explained it to Tamika and I um, seemed very straightforward and very understandable to make a informed choice, you know?
Yes. Well, you know something? If the Lord pushes me in that direction, that's where I'm going to go. But that's definitely something that's been, inside of me that really needs to get out there. Because when a patient goes back to dialysis after a failed transplant, nobody really wants to talk to you about that experience. They don't want you to frighten the patients that are waiting. And nobody wants to hear bad news, really. So
Wow.
you're just out there with your feelings.
Yeah, so we put up the link. Well, Tamika put up the link for the toolkit, the
Oh, great.
screening, and Tamika also said, or even Anthony Baltimore said, you should do it. Far as uh, with the web page or the group for rejected transplants, because I want to be honest with you. If you don't, somewhere down the line, we may be ending up doing something like that. But no, but it's important.
It is
It's
important.
it's very important, and even to the point of trying to collaborate with with like mental health counselors or organization
Yeah.
of mental health counselors to see if somebody would um, volunteer to do something like that, maybe once a month, maybe through an online uh, community. Because I mean, we have so many type of ways that we could transmit, where you can do a conference, Skype, just so many ways
Right.
that you can have something where you can partner with maybe the Black Mental Health Coalition or some type of mental health coalition, to where you can set up like a monthly webinar or a monthly ask the counselor session or ask them this. I'm sure someone heard your story that would be um, opt to do something like that, because it's really needed, and
Yeah.
taking the time for maybe an hour, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes
Right.
once a month or
Once a
twice a
month.
month
Right.
to do something online where people can ask questions, some format like this, and get a live broadcast answer where it could, it somebody may have the questions, but 10 other people may have the same thing that they may be
Oh,
thinking about.
that's always the way that it is. Any question that you have, somebody else has it too. And
So just something to look
I'm
into.
gonna think about that, and I'm gonna pray about it and see what I can do. I am so busy, Steve.
We
I'm
all
doing,
are, but
yeah,
but the
we do,
fight
but it's
continues.
so necessary. It
Oh,
really is
absolutely.
necessary. So,
Absolutely. And Tamika, she'll be the first one to tell you. I mean, when we started off, I mean, it was just it was the talk show, and then it came up with the documentary that we're still in the process of
and
doing.
those
And
are
then
so fantastic. What a blessing to the community those are.
yeah, we're definitely, we're definitely trying, and it looks like a whole lot, but at the same time, kidney disease is so dynamic
Yes,
that you got to go, I mean, at different angles.
yes. You
You
have to,
have to.
you have to flood every opportunity, every option that you can think of to try to get that word out there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So we wanted to put the depression screen toolkit back up. So if anybody wanted to get access to it, we have it right up on the screen. Um, Easy to get. It's easy to download. Don said it has some very interesting um, pointers on there and
Yeah,
ideas to combat depression.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we definitely over the time.
Oh my goodness, already?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But I just wanted to say it's been a pleasure. Well, let me just say this to our audience. This is part one of a two-part series with Don P. Morman-Edwards. Sunday, we'll be talking about her transplant journey that she experienced, and we'll also be talking about other transplant concerns that's out there. Uh, Tamika got abruptly disconnected, but it was um, one of the polls that I wanted to share with her and get her opinion, and that is, we did a poll that if you are actively on a kidney transplant list, would you accept a compromised or high risk kidney donation? We had 56% of the people said yes, they would accept a compromised kidney or high risk kidney donation, and 44% said no.
Wow.
So, I mean, we do have people that are willing to take the risk of receiving a high risk kidney donation, which is nothing wrong with that, because that's that is a personal decision.
Absolutely.
Individual personal decisions. However, just as a patient advocate and healthcare professional, I think everyone should be fully informed of what's involved when you're receiving one of these high risk or compromised kidneys, as they call them. What do you think, Don?
I agree with you 100%. A compromised kidney could be from a person that's older. It could be from a person that was a drug addict but didn't show any signs of disease. So there are some compromises that you may be able to compromise with, for lack of a better word. But then there's some that you have to ask questions. Okay, this is a compromised kidney. How is it compromised? What what is it? What was the criteria that you used to determine that this kidney is compromised, and what could the effects be on me as a result of accepting this compromised kidney? So you don't just say yes, I'll take it, and you have to ask those questions, because I say like this: you know what you got, but you don't know what you're going to get. So you better do your homework. And
Absolutely.
that goes for anything that you put inside your body.
I
Read.
agree. I agree 100%.
Yes.
So, all right, Don. I got some more poll questions that I'm going to go over on Sunday that I think is interesting to talk about as well. But did you have any shout outs? Anybody you wanted to say hey to, your group up in New York?
Oh my gosh, I don't want to be on here all night.
That's
But
okay.
I just want to shout out the New York State CKD champions, all of them, everyone who is a member of the group. I just want to thank all of them for their support and for tuning in, getting that education. I got to shout out my two nurses, Susan Dubin, that's my girl. She's my ride or die. And Kim Davis from Next Stage. She's another one. She is full of information and she cares about patients. She really immerses herself into her work. And shout out to New York and my Bethany Baptist Church family, and to all of my family, my daughter Dominique, and my mommy, and my sister whose name is Tamika.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had
Really?
three Tamikas we talked about tonight.
Wow.
Yeah. And
all right, Don.
I can't forget my ride or die, Stephanie Dixon and Aaron Battle. Those are my two board members. That's my chief financial officer and my chief operations officer. CKD champions wouldn't be around if it wasn't for them.
Oh yeah, what's their name again?
Stephanie Dixon.
I've seen Stephanie online.
Yeah, that's my girl. She's true blue, and so is Aaron Battle.
Aaron Battle. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, Don. Well, again, thank you for being on the show tonight. It was absolutely amazing to hear your story. I can't wait to hear the rest of your story, especially your transplant journey, your triumphs with the transplant, your
Right.
challenges with it, and what ultimately led you back to this point to be on home dialysis. So um, tune in, everyone, Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we'll be back again to talk with Dawn P. Morman-Edwards and her transplant journey. Until then, we see you on Sunday morning. Good night, Dawn. Thanks again for tuning in and
Okay.
sharing your journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Blessings to both of you and Tamika.
Thank you, Dawn. Talk to you Sunday. Take
Okay,
care.
now. Good night.
All right.